Alrighty. Okay, so for Mandy's sake, I'll just introduce us as a group. We're the Wild About Clifton group, which is just a bunch of people doing fun things like this whenever we feel like it. It's like totally no pressure. We made a website. We have a Facebook group called Naturally Clifton that Mark runs, and our goal is to help our neighbors see how precious this part of the county is and find ways to protect it. So what I want to do is, this will take maybe a little more than half an hour, so please leave anytime you need to, Mandy, it's no problem. I'm going to talk about City Nature Challenge, about what we're doing for Clifton, why anyone would want to use iNaturalist to begin with, how iNaturalist works, and then I'll just talk for a second about the Seek app. So City Nature Challenge is an event that takes place one weekend a year, Friday through Monday, a long weekend. And it's a friendly global competition between metropolitan areas to see who can get the most people to go out and notice the life in that urban area. And of course, our urban area at this point isn't all that urban, but we're part of the DC metro area. So just for fun, metro areas are ranked according to how many participants they get, how many different species of wild plants, animals, or fungi are observed, and how many of these observations have their identities confirmed by volunteers. So this year there are around 300 cities competing, which is like 100 more than last year. And the DC metro area has done really well we've been within the top 5 metropolitan areas for number of participants in the past. Now, our region extends from north of Frederick to south of Fredericksburg. So we hope to get people out into nature, really looking at the individuals that are that the natural world's made up of. You have to be 13 years old to have an iNaturalist account, but younger kids can find things for you. So it's a great family activity. If you want, on iNaturalist, you can join, quote unquote, the project for DC Nature Challenge 2021. Then they send you an occasional update about how our region's doing. But you don't need to join to participate. All you need to do is take a photo within that 4-day window within the DC metro area, and it'll be automatically included in the counts. So most metro areas, including ours, use iNaturalist to record the observations. There are a few metro areas that use a different software. So these are the observations that have been added so far to iNaturalist in Greater Clifton. 377 people have made 6,389 observations of 1,510 different species. That's pretty amazing, actually. It's only it's only a few years. And this is what happened last year in the 4-day City Nature Challenge period. So 6 observers, including me, observed 113 species. So that wasn't very much. But last year, of course, was a very sad year in many ways, although it did get a lot of people out into the fresh air. It's just that we had trouble figuring out how to organize things. So this year, our Wild About Clifton team decided that we would try to up our game a bit by challenging Oakton to see who can get the most participation. We're inviting everyone in Clifton to help out. So please spread the word to your neighbors and your friends. It totally counts if someone uploads a photo from here, even if they don't live here. And in fact, a lot of the photos that have been taken in Greater Cleveland have been taken in the Bull Run Occoquan Trail, probably by people just passing through. We made a really easy bingo card to turn this into a scavenger hunt. We'll be setting up a table Saturday and Sunday mornings in front of the bell jar in the town of Clifton. And we'll be giving out the bingo cards as well as collecting them, because at the end of City Nature Challenge on Monday, we're going to raffle off a $20 gift certificate for Peterson's ice cream to participants. So you can print off the cards from our website and send me an electronic copy, or you can just email me and tell me your iNaturalist username, and I'll add your name to the raffle. We don't really have to have the bingo card. This is our website where you can print your own bingo card. So this is how Oakton did last year, which is way better than us, though there was still only 22 people. But my friend who lives in Oakton, who accepted our challenge on Oakton's behalf, is a really wicked organizer. She knows all these scouting troops and it's really big in their community. So we're going to really have to work hard to not get creamed by Oakton this year. So now let's talk about why anyone would even ever use iNaturalist, which of course is available all year, not just during City Nature Challenge. So one reason is that nature just looks like a mass of green with some random unidentified bugs flying around to most of us. It looks pretty enough, but kind of generic and undifferentiated. But for me anyway, the real glory is in the details. For example, I noticed these green leaves in the winter, and I never knew what they were, and I never paid much attention. It was a little odd to have green leaves in the winter. But then I uploaded a photo of them to iNaturalist and learned right away that it's called a cranefly orchid, which has leaves in cold weather that disappear as it gets warmer, but then the flowers come up in the summer when there's no leaves. So later, someone pointed the flowers out to me in Chapel Road Park up on the hillside. And I learned that it gets its name cranefly orchid because the flowers look like crane flies sort of hovering around the stalk. So you can use the iNaturalist program to learn all about that just by clicking. And you can learn that it's imperiled in many states and that it's pollinated by a moth when the pollen sticks to the moth's eye. Photography has also cured me of bug blindness, and getting a close look at the teeny critters that live all around us. To me, it was like discovering that they're fairies living in my backyard. It was really magical. Another reason to use iNaturalist is that when we upload photos, it contributes to community science. So worldwide, there have been 61 million observations by 1.5 million people and 327,000 species as of this month. So in this screenshot, I filtered by Fairfax County, and there have been thousands of people participating here. So we've been essentially documenting life in Fairfax County. In this screenshot, I filtered it by plants, 2,400 species. Actual real scientific research can be conducted using this data. So one example of that is that the data can be correlated to more formal scientific surveys. So this is Jim Wagner's survey. Jim Wagner has been conducting formal surveys of dragonflies, butterflies, birds, blooming plants in 5 natural areas along the Potomac since 1987. He gets out there once or twice a week, year round, doing this with a team of people. And I've been very fortunate to be able to go on those surveys, and anyone can actually, by the way. So we started taking pictures as well and putting them on iNaturalist. And this shows in the last couple of years, the Lepidoptera, the moths and butterflies on Jim Wagner's surveys. So there have been 270 species of Lepidoptera identified so far. And that can be correlated with the dozen or so long-term butterfly studies in the United States. And Jim Wagner's is one of those dozen studies. But there are only a dozen studies. And so if you kind of see where you get a match with iNaturalist, then you can use iNaturalist data to look at all the rest of the United States in between these surveys. So, for example, this is very helpful for seeing trends over time with global warming. Now, of course, with iNaturalist, you only see what's there. You don't see what isn't there, what people didn't get a picture of. So an absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. But in the case of many species, it's actually a pretty good start. So another reason, which is very important to me to use iNaturalist, is that from what I've observed and what everyone has probably observed, essentially every natural area in Fairfax County is going to be paved over sooner or later if we don't protect it. So this is why I've been methodically documenting life in Chapel Road Park, which already has a pipeline running through it, by the way. I'm hoping that if people can start to see what lives around them or in their parks, they might start to value it and want to protect it. This is a page that I made for Herndon Friends Meeting, which is my Quaker church. iNaturalist allows you to make projects for a given location. And so basically you're creating a free website for your group. We had converted all our landscaping to native plants. And so far in the last 3 years since we started doing that, we've documented 111 species of animals on our property. And this is like 1/10 of an acre in the middle of Herndon, across from the fire station. So planting native plants really works. Excuse me. Another thing that's just kind of fun is that iNaturalist is a great source of public domain photos. The people who contribute can set it so that any photo they put up there is put in the public domain. Now, not everyone does that, but I've got no reason to protect my photos. No, I'm not a professional. And other people apparently feel the same way. So you can look up any species and filter by location or dates or by licensing restrictions. And then if you find ones that need no crediting, you can use it for your own purposes, which is very fun. You set that under account settings. iNaturalist is also just fun for educating yourself and entertaining yourself. Even if you never even take a picture, it's really a great resource. You can look at projects of locations, but you can also see projects of topics. And there's one, for instance, called Never Home Alone, where people upload photos of animals that were found inside their houses. Usually, most of this is photos of spiders and other insects, but I'm proud to say that I was the first one to upload a photo in my house of a copperhead snake. So you can read all about the species. You can see a phenology chart, meaning when it occurs. You can see a map of where it's been observed. You can look up its taxonomy. And it's just highly educational as a tool. So now I just want to talk fairly briefly about how you use iNaturalist, because it doesn't take much. It's really a pretty easy program to use. So for people who want to use their cell phone, you first have to download the app and turn on location services so that your photos will have embedded GPS locations. You need to give your app access to selected photos, and you can give it access to all your photos if you want, but I use selected photos. You'll need to make an account and a username. So you have to ask yourself, are you somebody who posts photos on Facebook when you're traveling to let everyone know you're out of town so the thieves can come to your house? If so, use any username you like. But if not, you might want to use something else besides your real name. I wish I had thought of this before I chose the name M.E. Fisher for mine. So to get started, you open up the app, you click on Observe, and you can either take pictures with the app or you can take them from your camera roll. Now, actually, it's better to do this the other way around. Take the photos first, because you may find that some are out of focus or, they need some cropping or whatever. Get the photos and then open the app and choose photos from your photo roll. You can add more photos of the same organism. It's not restricted to just one. You do need to think about whether this is a wild organism. This preferably is. This is a science project, and we definitely don't want photos of people or dogs or lions in the zoo up there, or your garden photos. Although you can get away with putting your garden photos up there, and if you do, be sure and mark it as captive cultivated. Then you also need to think to yourself whether you want other people to know the location of this plant or animal or fungus. Threatened species are going to be automatically obscured by the program. But if it's a locally rare species, it's not going to be obscured unless you obscure it. And if you choose obscured, the location is going to be given a 400 square kilometer assignment. So nobody's going to find this plant. If you make it private, there won't be any location showing at all. But of course, this may make it more difficult for people to identify it, and it's not so useful for scientific studies. But that's okay if that's what you want to do. Now, alternatively, and this is what I mostly do, you can use a regular camera and upload your photos from home. So you can upload them all at once, and then you can, if you have multiple photos of the same organism, you just drag and drop them onto one. You do need to assign a location, and you want to do that first because once the computer knows the location, it's going to be better at guessing the identification. You can select, if they're all taken in the same place, you can select them all at once and add the location once. You don't have to do it one photo at a time. Now, if you have a way of getting GPS metadata onto your photos that you took with your camera, then that saves you some time and makes it more precise. I actually do that. I use a GPS app simultaneously and then meld it together using Lightroom. You know, it's slightly elaborate and probably more than most people want to bother with. Okay, and then, all right, so you've uploaded the photos, and then you just click on where it says species name, and it'll give you a drop-down list, and or you can type in something. You can add a description of it if you want, and that might be helpful for in some cases. So, for instance, I don't think anybody can tell the difference between a fish crow and an American crow just by looking at it. So you could type in there, it's a fish crow because I heard it call, for example. There are all sorts of other little tags you can put on it if you want. I'd never bother with it, but it could be amusing if you were interested in that. All the photos that you have uploaded are going to be saved and cataloged. And so this is another really fun thing about iNaturalist for anyone who likes to take a lot of nature photos. In my case, I have actually had uploaded over 10,000 of my own photos, and then I deleted them from my hard drive. So, which is totally necessary because my hard drive isn't big enough for all these photos. So this is great. It's all cataloged. So now if I want to find a picture of a bee or something, because I'm giving a talk on bees, I can just filter by bees. And there's a little bit of degradation when you put it up on iNaturalist and then download it again. But for my purposes, it's so minor, I can't tell at all. I don't think anybody could tell unless they were a professional or want to blow it up like really huge. The only downside to this is that when we put things in the cloud, the quote unquote, the cloud is actually, you know, some huge, ugly data center in Loudoun County that's using a shocking amount of electricity. So once I kind of wrap my head around that, I realized that this is a very cool program that serves scientific purposes and other purposes, but we should be a little choosy and not just put completely junky, useless photos or 1,000 observations of the same organism. So anyway, once you've uploaded it and submitted it, later, well, the artificial intelligence is going to help you decide on the species, or at least try and get close. But later, other volunteers are going to finalize the ID. So these are people who actually know what they're doing. They may look at it the very same day, or they might look at it later. So don't be discouraged if you don't see someone looking at it. It may even be years later. And once two people agree, one of whom could be you, then the ID is finalized and it's labeled as research grade. So you want to be a little careful not to guess. If you know what it is for sure, then put the species. But if you don't know what it is, which a lot of time you won't, you could just put like the genus, or you could even just say amphibian or animal or plant, something like that. You may think, well, that's really stupid. I mean, anyone can see that a plant's a plant. Why would you even label it? Well, that's because then afterwards, if someone's going through identifying things and they're a plant expert, they can filter by plants and they'll find your photo. You want to only submit identifiable photos. It is very frustrating, especially during the City Nature Challenge period where a lot of people are using this program. When people just sort of take their cell phone and aim it at the woods. and you get like a picture of the woods. Like, what is it that you wanted to try and identify? You need to crop it or get in closer or something. And you need to submit photos that are in focus, or at least enough in focus that you have some chance of identifying it. You want to have good light, and you want to frame what you're looking at. It's just really very annoying when people put up completely blurry photos, especially when it's a plant, because plants don't move, so you really have no excuse to put up a blurry photo. So here we have the flowers, the leaves, and an overall view of the plant in its setting. And so those three things together will often help make the identification. But there are a lot of plants that are kind of nondescript looking, and they all look alike. And so in their cases, the ID might come down to something like whether the stem is hairy or smooth, or whether the calyx is spread or tight. I mean, there are all these details, and you won't really know. So some of the time, you'll put up a photo and no one will be able to identify it. Oh, well. You want to also get multiple views of animals if you can. The problem is that they tend to go away, but if you have a chance, head on, side on, etc. In the cases of a lot of insects, to discriminate one species from another might actually require a dissecting microscope. But a lot of the time, the experts can get it down to at least a genus level, and sometimes, and not infrequently, the species level if the photos are good enough. So how do you even find these little insects? Well, what I do to find insects is I just kind of wander around outside and look for any movement or any kind of like anomaly among the leaves that catches your eyes. And you may need to just be really patient and not expect to see, 100 different insects in one day. A good day, you may just see a few. But it's still just totally lovely to wander around communing with the life that's out there. So when photographing fungi, a little pocket mirror that shows you the underside is very helpful for identification. And you have to have the underside of fungi to identify them. It doesn't even have to be something that's currently living. It just needs to be evidence of life. It could even be dead. A feather will definitely identify if this is a turkey feather. And tracks also count. This is a turkey track. It helps to put something in the photo to show scale. I have to say, however, that putting my credit card up on iNaturalist is probably not the best idea. At least it doesn't have the number. But a small ruler, of course, would be ideal. But who's got a small ruler on them? A coin will definitely do. Scat can work. It can be identifiable. I've learned, apparently, that coyotes like pawpaws. The most fun experience I've had was when I was down in Chapel Road Park taking a photo of an ivy-leaved speedwell, which is just a very common non-native weed that's kind of taken over one part of the park. And the way I know it's non-native is because there's a little pink symbol at the top when it's non-native. So anyway, I uploaded this pink ivy-leaf speedwell, but someone changed my ID to say pink ivy-leaf speedwell. And so I put in a comment to that person. I said, how do you know it's pink ivy-leaf speedwell? Because I was interested and I looked it up in the flora of Virginia and it wasn't in there. And so it's like, it's not supposed to be in Virginia. So he wrote back and he told me all these details about how you tell them apart. It has to do with like the spreading hairs, blah, blah, blah. And when I clicked on his name, it brought me to his profile. Now, my profile doesn't say anything because I want some privacy anyway, but he had written that he's a German professor who did his PhD on the speedwell genus. And so I wrote a Virginia botanist about this, and he asked me to collect a specimen. So I ran out of the park and I followed his instructions to dry out the specimen, and I mailed it to him. And he confirmed the observation. Yes, pink ivy-leaf speedwell. So now it's going to be added to the flora of Virginia. I just thought that was like totally cool. But even if you're not making new discoveries, iNaturalist is fun because it's a community. You start to recognize the people who are identifying your photos. And you too can help identify other people's photos. You may think you're no expert, and maybe you're not an expert, but you're certainly going to know things that other people don't happen to know. So for instance, garden plants, it's amazing how many people don't, for instance, know what a dogwood is. Why would they if we never learned? So if you identify things that are easy for you, you save time for the real experts. So you can filter it so that you're only identifying things in one place or one type of organism, such as plants or spiders or whatever you enjoy. So it's good to pitch in and do that, especially right after City Nature Challenge, because there are all these beginners who'll be posting photos of random things. And, they won't really know the difference between a dogwood and a goldfinch, so you can help. So finally, I'm just going to mention very briefly this other app that is a companion app made by iNaturalist and using iNaturalist data. It's incredibly simple. It was designed with children in mind, but it's great for adults as well because it's really fast, faster than using iNaturalist. All you need is the free app. You don't need to make an account, and that eliminates the privacy concern for children. You don't need to take a photo, although you can if you want and add it to the iNaturalist. All you have to do is open up the app and hold your phone up to the plant or whatever you can get to stand still for you. And it's going to try to make an identification. You may have to kind of change angles, like hold it a different way, closer or further, till it gets down to a species. So I just held it up to a bunch of flowers on my desk here. And I was able at the right angle to tell me it was the Formosa lily. I don't know if it's a Formosa lily or not, but that was iNaturalist's first guess. Now, the first guess of iNaturalist artificial intelligence is not always the correct one, and you have no way of confirming it, but a lot of the time it is the correct one. So it's going to be a very fun tool if you'd like on a little hike, and you can just hold up your camera, your phone to things as you go along and quickly get an idea of what you're seeing on the path. So that's it. I will turn off my screen and let me know if you have any questions.